16 days into the most significant U.S. military operation since Iraq. And today, the conflict escalated to a level that is unlike anything we have seen so far in this war. The United States and Israel have bombed Isfahan, not a military base on the outskirts, not a radar installation in the desert. Isfahan, the heart of Iran's nuclear program, the city where uranium conversion happens, the city where the fuel for a nuclear weapon is processed. And today, it was struck again, with over 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from a U.S. submarine in the Gulf of Oman, alongside Israeli precision airstrikes that hit at least 4 buildings at the nuclear complex. And while all of this was happening, while the bombs were falling on Isfahan, President Trump stepped in front of cameras at the White House Rose Garden and said 3 words that shut the door on any hope of a fast peace deal. "We are not ready." I am Ethan Walker. This is your Day 16 special report. If you have been watching this series, you know that each day has been more serious than the last. Today is no different. Stay with me. Everything you are about to hear is verified, sourced, and critically important. Before we go into today's events, let's give you the full picture of where this conflict stands right now, because the scale of what has happened over the past 16 days is staggering. The conflict began on February 28, 2026, when the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes against Iran. According to confirmed reports, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the very first day of strikes, a development so significant that Iran's constitution required the formation of an interim leadership council. On March 8, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the supreme leader, was elected as the new supreme leader, stepping into one of the most powerful positions in the Muslim world at an extraordinarily volatile moment. In the 16 days since the war began, Iran's Ministry of Health has reported at least 1,444 people killed and more than 18,500 wounded inside Iran. Iran has retaliated with over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and approximately 2,000 drones fired at targets across the Middle East, including strikes against U.S. bases in Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel itself. By March 5th, just 1 week into the conflict, Iran had fired over 200 ballistic missiles toward Israel in a single wave. U.S. Central Command has been operational every single day, striking Iranian missile production facilities, air defense systems, naval assets, and, critically, nuclear infrastructure. That brings us to Isfahan, and what happened there today is the most significant single development of this entire conflict so far. Here is exactly what happened at Isfahan. According to confirmed reporting from Al Jazeera, the Council on Foreign Relations, CBS News, the IB Times, and U.S. Central Command statements. In the early hours of Saturday, March 15th, day 16 of this conflict, a barrage of U.S. and Israeli strikes hit Isfahan province with extraordinary force. The United States fired more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles from an Ohio-class nuclear submarine positioned in the Gulf of Oman. Simultaneously, Israeli F-15 fighter jets delivered precision strikes on at least 4 buildings at the Isfahan nuclear complex. What exactly is Isfahan, and why does it matter so much? Isfahan is home to the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center, one of Iran's most important nuclear facilities. It is where uranium conversion takes place. In simple terms, this is the stage in the nuclear process where uranium hexafluoride gas is converted back into uranium metal. That is one of the critical final steps that would go into building a nuclear weapon. According to the Council on Foreign Relations reporting, the Israeli strikes specifically targeted the uranium conversion facility, the building where that process happens. This is not a symbolic strike. This is targeting the physical infrastructure of a potential nuclear weapons pathway. According to General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, an initial assessment indicates that Isfahan, along with Natanz and Fordow, the three main nuclear sites targeted so far in this conflict, have all, in his words, sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. However, and this is an important detail, a preliminary classified U.S. intelligence report which was leaked to media and then disputed by the White House suggested that the strikes may have only set back Iran's nuclear program by less than 6 months rather than destroying it permanently. Trump's administration called that assessment, quote, flat out wrong. The truth of the damage assessment remains contested and unclear at this stage. Separately, Al Jazeera is reporting that a U.S.-Israeli missile strike on an industrial area of Isfahan also hit a factory producing heating and cooling equipment. Iranian media reports that at least 15 workers were killed inside that factory at the time of the attack. This is confirmed by the semi-official Fars news agency. Iran's foreign ministry has condemned the strike on the factory as a direct attack on civilians and has filed a formal protest. In total, on March 15th alone, heavy airstrikes were reported across Isfahan province, along with 20 explosions reported near Shiraz, heavy explosions in southern Tehran, strikes on Desful Air Base, Khomeini, Hamadan, and significant damage to the port facility at Jask in Hormozgan province. Now let us talk about the statement that is dominating every headline and every conversation around this conflict today. President Trump, speaking from the White House Rose Garden on March 15, 2026, while Isfahan was burning, declared that the United States is, in his exact words, not ready for a deal right now. Iran has to stop its aggression first. They've been playing games for years, and it's time they learn we mean business. No more weak deals like before. Let that sit for a moment, because the context behind that statement is extraordinary. Here is what you need to know. On February 6th, just 3 weeks before this war began, Iran and the United States were sitting in Oman's capital Muscat holding indirect nuclear talks. On February 27th, literally the day before the strikes began, Oman's foreign minister publicly stated that a breakthrough had been reached. Iran had reportedly agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium, to full verification by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and to irreversibly downgrade its enriched uranium to the lowest possible level. The foreign minister said peace was, quote, within reach. Talks were scheduled to resume on March 2nd. Instead, on February 28th, the bombs started falling. So when Trump says today, we are not ready for a deal, he is saying it in the context of a conflict that began while diplomatic negotiations were actively in progress. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff has said that the talks broke down because Iran insisted on its inalienable right to enrich uranium, rejecting a U.S. proposal for zero enrichment. Iran's position was that they had the right to civilian nuclear power. The U.S. position was that any enrichment capacity could lead to a weapon. What Trump's statement today means in practical terms is this. There is no ceasefire coming in the immediate future. The United States is signaling that it intends to continue military operations until Iran fundamentally changes its position, or until Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure is sufficiently degraded. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been explicit about the objectives. He stated that the U.S. military goals are to destroy Iranian missiles, destroy Iranian missile production, destroy their navy and other security infrastructure, and ensure Iran will never have nuclear weapons. That is a comprehensive military campaign, not a targeted warning strike. The world's reaction to today's developments has been swift and severe. Let us go through the most important responses, starting with the oil markets, because for most people watching this video, this is where the war reaches into their daily lives most directly. Oil prices surged 8% today, with Brent crude futures jumping to $112 per barrel. That is a significant spike driven entirely by fears over disruption to Persian Gulf shipping lanes and the ongoing escalation of the conflict. Higher oil means higher fuel prices at the pump, higher shipping costs, and higher prices on everyday goods. This war is not abstract. It is already affecting the cost of living for ordinary families in the UK, the United States, and across the world. From Iran, the new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei addressed the nation and called today's strikes on Isfahan a desecration of Iran's sovereignty and a direct attack on the Iranian people. Iranian state media claimed that air defense systems intercepted 60% of incoming missiles, but independent analysts, including those at the Council on Foreign Relations, have questioned those figures. Iran has vowed retaliation, and Iran's foreign ministry has filed formal protests with the United Nations. The humanitarian situation inside Iran continues to deteriorate. Iran's Ministry of Culture has reported that 56 museums and historic sites have been damaged during the 16 days of conflict, including the extraordinary 17th-century Naqsh-e-Jahan Square in Isfahan, Chehel Sotun, the Shah Mosque, and Jameh Mosque. UNESCO has issued urgent statements calling for the protection of these irreplaceable World Heritage Sites. On March 11th, UNESCO formally urged all parties to protect Iran's historic and cultural heritage. This is a dimension of the conflict that is not being covered enough. Diplomatically, Russia has entered the picture directly. On March 8th, a strike on Isfahan damaged the Russian consulate, injuring Russian diplomatic staff. Moscow called it a blatant violation of international conventions. Russia has now formally demanded answers from both Washington and Tel Aviv, adding another layer of geopolitical tension to an already complex situation. Let us step back and look at the big picture. Because with Trump saying no deal, Isfahan bombed, Russia's consulate damaged, North Korea firing missiles in Asia, and oil at $112 a barrel, it is critically important to understand what the possible outcomes of this conflict are. There are three realistic scenarios from where we stand today. Scenario 1. Accelerated collapse of Iran's military capability. The U.S.-Israeli campaign has been systematically degrading Iran's ability to fight. Iran's ballistic missile stockpile is depleting. By early March, analysts noted that the rate of Iranian missile launches was already declining, suggesting Iran was rationing its remaining arsenal. If this trend continues, Iran's ability to sustain a long-term military campaign diminishes significantly. In this scenario, within the coming weeks, Iran could reach a point where it has no choice but to agree to much more severe terms than it would have accepted before the war, potentially including full abandonment of uranium enrichment. Scenario 2. Regional expansion. This is the scenario that most worries the international community. Iran has already retaliated against U.S. allies including Kuwait, Iraq, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and has struck Israeli territory directly. Hezbollah in Lebanon has re-entered the conflict, firing rockets and missiles at Israel. If any of the regional players, particularly Iran's proxy forces, escalate to a point that triggers a major response, the conflict could rapidly draw in additional nations. The presence of North Korea on the other side of the world firing missiles simultaneously adds to the sense that the global security architecture is under unprecedented stress. Scenario 3. Forced negotiation. Despite Trump saying no deal today, the economic and diplomatic pressure on the United States is building. Oil at $112 a barrel is unsustainable for the global economy. Multiple European governments have issued calls for a ceasefire. The United Nations Secretary General has demanded restraint. Trump's planned visit to China beginning March 31st may create a diplomatic opening. Beijing has significant leverage with both Washington and Tehran and could potentially broker a framework for talks. This is the outcome that financial markets are hoping for. Whether it is realistic given today's escalation is another question entirely. Here is where we stand tonight. Day 16 of the Iran War, March 15, 2026. The United States fired more than 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles from a submarine at Isfahan's nuclear facilities. Israel struck at least 4 buildings at the nuclear complex, including the uranium conversion facility. At least 15 workers were killed in a factory hit during the same operation. Oil prices have spiked to $112 a barrel. Trump has publicly declared the United States is not ready for a deal. Iran's new supreme leader has vowed retaliation. Russia's consulate in Isfahan was previously damaged, and Moscow is demanding accountability. And in Asia, North Korea fired 10 ballistic missiles on the same day, a simultaneous crisis that U.S. forces now have to consider. The 3 nuclear sites at the core of this conflict, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, have all sustained what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs calls extremely severe damage. Whether that damage is permanent and whether it has truly ended Iran's nuclear pathway is the question that the coming days and weeks will answer. What is certain is this: Day 17 will bring more developments. This story is not slowing down. It is accelerating. If you want to stay on top of every single development as it happens, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification right now. We have been with you every day of this conflict. We will be here tomorrow. We will be here on Day 17, Day 18, and every day after that with fully verified, fully sourced reporting. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Trump's no-deal statement means this war goes on for weeks more? Or do you think there is a diplomatic off-ramp coming? I read every comment. Let me know. I am Ethan Walker. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay safe, and we will see you tomorrow.